Hi, and welcome to the Paradox of Change, our mental health podcast inspiring people to talk. Today, our resident coach, Fee, navigates the bustle of London with phone in hand to interview Rum, a fellow coach. They dive into mental health and the intricacies of human relationship, sex therapy, amongst others, from a coach's perspective.
And yeah, I'm just excited. I'm excited to share with whatever it is that you want to know about me. And also, if I have the opportunity to ask you maybe a couple of questions as well.
Please.
I think it'll be an opportunity for us to get to know each other as well. So we've known each other maybe 3-4 months?
Something like that, yeah.
Kind of from a distance, and then recently we got in touch in terms of you got me to come to one of your Lottie's workshops,
Yes.
which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I hope there's more of. And finally meeting you in person, it's quite surreal. So
yeah. No, I know, it's like you're real.
yeah, I'm not just Coach Rum,
that's it.
for whatever reason, like
Exactly.
people think I am.
You actually exist.
I actually exist.
Yeah, in the flesh.
In flesh. Yeah.
So the whole purpose of this podcast is to put it on the Paradox of Change, which is dedicated to interviewing people like yourself, so mental health professionals, counsellors, coaches, and even clients as well.
Sure.
Just to explore, their journeys, to take inspiration for anyone watching, and any sort of key takeaways, any learnings, anything like that. So for me, being part of this podcast, I think to myself, okay, this is a chance to be creative. What do I want to learn about? What do I want to know? And so I guess it would be really good to hear from you where you are in your journey right now, what you do, and just a bit about your story.
Well, I guess my exploration into the world of coaching really started when I had my own coach about, I would say, close to 6 years ago. It was mid 2017 where my father introduced me to this man he goes to the gym with. He introduced me to Mehran, and I call him M for short. He studied NLP in coaching, and other practices as well. He's an ICF accredited coach. And just by learning and hearing how he was coaching me, the first thought came to my head is, I really like what this guy is doing to me, and how he's able to open the realms in my brain to connect to different parts of my thinking. And it didn't really hit me until recently, where I was like, hold on a second, like I can do that in a natural way with people. So I would say it was roughly around mid 2022 where I fully decided to immerse myself into the coaching space, and I went and I enrolled in a course called Animas, and they're a ICF accredited school. Now I'm working towards getting my actual ICF accreditations as well. I think there's certain levels, there's ACC, MCC, and the PCC. So I'm working towards my ACC, which is I think 100 hours or so. Sorry, 200 plus hours also. So that's how I got into it. Now, coaching, for where my interest lies and what I really like to talk about is the dynamics in relationships. I like talking about sex with friends, love, breakups, dating, heartbreak, all that sort of that cluster of things that you would call, your love life, if you will. So that's where I'm sort of emerging myself into. Now, I was trained by Animas in transformational coaching, and there's certainly some elements of transformational coaching that you can take into relationship coaching, and that's that mindset shift, and that core belief needs to change before you can actually immerse yourself in a very spectacular or healthy relationship to come. So it's such a beautiful journey. I have so much to learn. There's so many untapped territories which I haven't even looked at, and if I can just really collaborate with other creators and other coaches in this space, better for me and the better for them, just knowledge exchange and value add to society as well.
Love that.
You know?
Actually, on that note, you helped me to have quite a shift. So you had written a blog on your Substack.
Substack,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was more from a place of supporting a fellow coach. Let me see what this is all about. The title of it was about ghosting, so it's not really something that I had come across where I am in my stage of life. So I wasn't thinking, what can I get out of this when I first read it, but I actually took so much from it.
Oh, amazing.
The biggest thing for me was it helped me discover I had a core belief, an unconscious core belief about men in general that I didn't even know existed. And what it raised for me was, because you talked a lot about your feelings, like how that process of early dating can feel, what happens when someone doesn't reciprocate that level of interest, and then the repercussions of that. So how that then makes you feel like, where is this person? What are they doing? What time, looking at the WhatsApp, if they're online status and things like that. And it can really...
We've all been there. We've all been there.
So I think, and it made me realize that men feel the same as women.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really... I even said to you on the message, this sounds so dumb.
Yeah.
But then it helped me to realize I obviously have a core belief about men, that men are completely different to women. So it really got me to help me reflect on what I actually think about myself and how I then interact with men, and what that core belief is driving underneath certain behaviors outside of that.
Absolutely.
So it's really powerful. What can you share a little bit about your experience with that time in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think the topic of ghosting in dating is very prominent. Like it happens to the best of us, and it happens to the worst of us as well. And I thought I went through something like this recently, and because it was so, and I don't know if it was because of recency bias or whatnot, but because it was so new, like so recent for me, I felt the need to just share my story there and then. And it's so common in dating nowadays, and it's a very easy way to get out of a situation without having to explain yourself. Now, for those on the receiving end of ghosting, I think they're the ones that obviously get hurt the most, and the reason for that is they start to have these feelings that it's them and it's not the person who ghosted them. You start having these obsessive thoughts, you start having these questions about why this person would do this to me. We thought we had something great, and we've all been there where we've had like a brief period of time, like a 2-3 week period where we're just non-stop texting with the situationship, not the person on the other side. And, you're sending texts, you're FaceTiming, you meet up, you go out, you sleep together, all these great things that come at the beginning of the relationship, and then poof, like done. What happens then? So and it can be really, it can hurt your image a lot. You can lose a lot of like confidence in yourself. And I guess the aim of the blog was just to give people I want to say a temporary solution, or sort of like a temporary relief when they read that. But really, I wanted to hit the core and get people to understand and shift their mindsets about the whole situation, look at it from the lens of an eagle, and holistically look at it and say, well, actually, and I think the title of the blog post was Ghosted, it's not you, it's them. So really from the get-go, I was trying to get my point across that, if you're reading this, just know it's not you, it's them. So just there and then, immediately they think, I'm trying to captivate the reader and getting them to think like, oh, this is interesting. What's this about? And yeah, I mean, hopefully I got my point across to you as well when you read it. And I mean, your takeaway was quite interesting. You just didn't believe that men really thought this way.
I didn't think the obsessive element was the same for men. I just assumed that was more of a female trait. So again, that was refreshing to know that the damage can be done either side.
Absolutely.
But it also got me thinking about the whole concept of ghosting, because in my day job in recruitment, we get that all of the time. And again, you say it's an easy way to get out of a difficult situation without having to explain yourself. Now, as a recruiter and a hard-asked, not taking no for an answer kind of recruiter, I find that very challenging. So I have this little technique that I now do. Whether this will apply to dating would be interesting. I'd be interested in your take. Is I have this thing called a magic text.
Okay.
And it's the last ditch effort to get that person to respond.
Right.
So once we've tried all the niceties of just checking in, seeing where you're at, how you're getting on, whatever, and still no reply, the last ditch effort is to send it's an emotionally led text. So it comes from a place of, look, let's level here. We've supported you through this process for however long. You initially said that you were really interested. I'm really keen to draw a line under this either way. I would really appreciate it if you could come back to me and let me know what you'd like to do. Also, as a point to the client, this is sort of involving a third party here, is don't ever close the door on yourself. Always leave it ajar. Always allow it to be open somewhat.
Okay.
So because this industry is small, you never know who you're going to run into. So it's just as a little extra sweetener, I add that on there as well. If I hope to hear from you by the end of the day. So again, a really clear instruction of what I'm expecting back.
Absolutely.
And it's at 99.9% effective.
Okay.
I will get a result from that text.
Yeah, I can see why that would work. I can see why that, and especially in the dating world as well. I think if you do eventually, if you're talking to someone and they're just not being very responsive, or you can feel that their response is kind of downsized and they're just not being as present as they were before, I can see a text like that obviously changed and attuned to more of a romantic scenario actually working. There's a guy that I follow on YouTube. He's my inspiration when it comes to the sort of the coaching world, especially the relationship. Matthew Hussey, you might have
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think he does teach, and for whoever is wondering and wants to better their texting game, for whether it's closure or whether it's being more flirtatious and more open, but for like those closing texts or those reassurance texts, I can really see that working, in terms of like being like, hey, just wanted to see where your headspace is at. I value your time and I value my time, sort of thing. Where do you think this is going? And if not, I'd rather you sort of be honest with me. There's nothing wrong with sending a text like that.
Absolutely. I think for me, I'd be really a lot more direct.
Yeah.
Because again, the magic text to me is a last ditch. So I've literally, this is the last piece of contact you'll have from me.
Yeah.
This magic text. So I will put everything into it. So it will be more direct than just, where are you? For me, it would be, I guess, putting myself in that space right now, it would be, I feel, so speaking from a place of I feel that we had a really good time together. I feel like we had a connection. I had so much fun with you, and I was hoping that would continue. I am really surprised it hasn't, and it has upset me that you have just cut this off.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't use me, I'd say us. This, leaving it separate from myself. I'm hoping I hear from you by the end of the day to let me know where you stand. If I don't, I'll assume that this is on you, and I wish you all the best. So it's from a place of like, this is my closure.
100%. Yeah, and I think what's really important there is, as you touched upon, is not to make it about you. It's more about the reassurance of, us, like I think we had something special, or even though you're saying you are kind of making it,
Yeah.
but you are expressing your thoughts, you know,
Exactly.
you're not meant to be like, we thought we could, you know, continue this or something. It's just, yeah, as you said, it's we had something great. Not quite sure what happened, but I value my time. I value my energy and the efforts that I'm putting towards you. And so I'm not getting it back. So I'm just gonna assume that you're not interested, and that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think once you say that, that puts that power shift, that dynamic changes.
You've taken your power back.
You've taken your power back, exactly. You know, when you're like, I'm good, that's when things start to change.
Yeah.
So 100%, there needs to be a magic text. Or
Magic
probably,
text.
there is a magic text. There is a magic text that needs to, you know, be crafted.
Yeah.
Maybe we should come up with that after.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's another podcast in itself, isn't it? Or a YouTube something or other.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also talked about over-investing early on in the relationship, and your words were something to the effect of, do we need to compromise, or should we change ourselves to fit someone else's mold? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, no, again, when we're at the beginning of something and we find someone just so attractive and we're just emulsed by their beauty, it's difficult to navigate your thoughts in that moment. You just think everything is right with this person. Have you ever met someone who's just so charming? They could charm the pants out of you, and you're just, you know, you're just so infatuated by them, but you don't see their bad sides from the flaws from the start. So you start to build this idea in your head that this person could be good for me later on in the future. And it happens all, and especially women as well. Like, you guys have everything, but you could look at a guy and almost like imagine the next 5 years with them. I don't know what it is. But I'll tell you one thing, that's something that us guys, we can't do, but we do.
Can't do, but do. Oh,
Do.
right, where's my pen?
Yeah.
Right, we'll come back to that.
Yeah. But I lost my train of thought, what I was trying to say.
Well,
Yeah, so we just start to build this idea of someone, and you effectively start putting them on a pedestal. And yes, in early stage dating and when you're in a situationship, you only want to find out about their good stuff as well. Like that is what's prevalent, and that's what's prefaced at the start. No one really goes into a date and starts blagging on about their red flags. You know, oh, by the way, I sleep with my socks on. You know, that might be a small red flag or something, but oh, by the way, like, I might not answer you for a week because I'm just so busy with work. No one's really gonna do that. Or I have a bad relationship with my sister or something like that. Everyone's trying to show their good side. And so you start putting these people on a pedestal, and then later, as time goes on, and in a very small period of time, you start to overinvest your thoughts and your feelings into this person. And I think that can, again, going back to what we said earlier on, it can really create a power shift. And that's not a good place to be in when you're first starting out with someone. You really want to find that equilibrium, that middle ground, and set the boundaries and expectations from the start. So,
I'm studying level 4 at the moment, and therapeutic counselling just started in September, and we are learning about the psychodynamic approach. And in that approach, it talks a lot about fantasy, but spelt PH, not FA.
right.
PH meaning it's unconscious fantasies. Now, you talked about fantasies and how we can sometimes build up this picture. Like you said, women can sometimes plan 5 years ahead with someone they've known for 2 weeks, which I believe is absolutely true. I think, I don't know how, I don't know why, but we can almost take ourselves on this journey that doesn't actually exist.
Absolutely.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we get we get attached to the fantasy, not the reality. And so my question was going to be to you about, do we go with perfection or potential? So as in the perfection of like the what's happening, like the limerence, the loved up stage, this exciting part that we are engaging with, or is it the potential of what this could turn into?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question. My answer to that would be to really ask yourself, do I know this person at all? You know, is this person giving me what I currently need in my life right now? And it might be quite bold to ask those questions in such a early on stage in dating, but really and truly, like, you kind of know from the start whether or not this person can give you those things, or at least they show signs of whether or not the potential is there for them to show you those things. So less so striving for perfection, but more so reflecting on what's currently happening right now. And I think it's really important for everyone to have a baseline of necessities and needs. So what I actually get my clients to do, one technique actually, is I really start to ask them and and start to unfold what is it that they're actually looking for. And then I ask them, have you actually sat down with a pen and paper and written down what is it that you really want in terms of the traits that you want in a partner? What are the key baseline foundation things that you need in your life? And it really just starts with that, because once those things are obvious and you know them to the core, once someone starts to peel away, once you start to get to know someone and you start to peel those layers away, and you actually find out, hold on a second, like, this person's not like, my style is I need comfort and I need someone to check in on me daily, and this person's not doing that. Now there's sort of two ways of that. Either you can communicate that earlier on, and if you do and they agree with it, then great. Now it's, can they now stick to it? And then the second part is they just don't do that. So then you're kind of left with, all right, so that's another sort of check. I'm quite against the ideas of check boxes and like Xing them out, or like, oh yes, like, you know, when they say like, oh, it ticks all the boxes but something blah blah blah. I do think it's just, going back to your question, we shouldn't strive for perfection, nor should we always look at the potential, but it's currently working with the here and the now, and it's understanding, what are they giving me? How are they making me feel right now in this present moment in time, that I can then take forward and look at other traits and other aspects at the same time as well.
I love that. And that really reminds me of the work that I do with the mindfulness element of it. It's not just business coaching. There is a real mindfulness element, which is bringing it to the present moment. Like, what is actually happening right now with yourself, with others, within the relationship, within potential future relationships? Because without that, we either get too caught up on what's already happened in our past, or we get too caught up on what might happen. And we forget that actually it's about how you feel right now.
100%.
100%. But I'm going to throw something at you right now.
Go on.
Let's see how it lands. Get ready. So from my perspective, from an outsider looking in to this dating world, why is it that I have this perception that if you're looking to date someone, I don't know if it's a judgment or what it is, or a core belief, but I keep thinking to myself as you're talking, people seem to want to have, like you just said, the boxes ticked, okay? But what happened to kind of falling in love with someone and then you growing together? Because it's almost like the people that you're searching for, you as in not you personally, but you as in as someone that's potentially looking to date, it feels like there's an element of like they have to have all their ducks in a row. They have to be financially this, they have to have their own place, or they have to, you know, whatever the list is, or, you know, have their mental health, you know, their self-development on track, or whatever it is. But what about it not being perfect, it being a bit scrappy, but actually you then getting together and going on that journey together?
Yeah.
Where does that
That's
fit in?
that's interesting. I think what came up for me as you were speaking there is sort of twofold. I couldn't help but think about obviously societal roles and societal pressures and what's happening at the moment. I think I think one of the reasons why we find it so hard to fall in love is choice. We nowadays, you've obviously got the dating apps, you've got the going out aspect and meeting people organically. People are just more open to meeting more people, and I do, and I've said this before in my friendship circles, that choice is not necessarily a good thing. It's good to live a life in a sort of an abundance mindset, which I have spoken about in one of my other blog posts. But having choice, I would think that, I'm talking from, you know, if I was to really take this from personal experience, I do get overwhelmed. And I can't help to think that others would also feel overwhelmed as well. So I think having that choice makes it harder for you to focus and really understand, because, you know, you've got one person doing one thing, oh, he's great, he's got this, but he doesn't have that. And then she has this, but she doesn't, I don't know, has a good relationship with her family, or whatever it is that you have in your head. I think that makes it initially hard for you to, as you said, like, not be perfect and fall in love with someone, or just grow together. The other thought that I have in my head as you were speaking is, and I don't know if this is the correct way to think about it, but it does relate to the societal changes and the societal roles that we now have. I think women and men are both taking different roles of masculine and feminine at the moment. And I think whereas when it used to be a lot easier in our parents' days, you know, the older generation, where they would meet someone, I'm talking maybe like, you know, the 40s, 50s, maybe just about to the 70s, it was quite prominent what the man was doing. He was a sole provider, and women would seek that. So the demand has changed. I think women are looking for different things in men, and so are men, by the way. I think men are always you know, they're kind of looking for a hybrid role in a woman. You know, can you be the housewife, but can you also work and take care of the kids and organize holidays and do this and that? I just think, to answer your question, that could be a reason as to why there is no sort of perfect scenario, where back in the day it was quite, there wasn't really an option. Now we have options, and now it's like we're bombarded with so much choices, and our heads are just messed up at the moment. I really truly think, you know, I'm not against dating apps. I love dating apps. I think it's a great way to meet people. How can Rum from Kingston meet someone who lives in Croydon if I didn't know you existed? So it's allowed us that ability for us to cross paths in one way or another. But yeah, choices is great in that respect. But then again, I've also got someone from Hammersmith that I can talk to as well, without having to put in much effort. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
It does.
It could be one potential.
Get ready, I'm going to throw something else at you now. Okay, so you're talking about loads of choices. You might not want to put it in your pocket when you hear what it is.
Oh God, yeah. God.
You're talking about having lots of choices. If that's the case, why not go polyamorous, where you have multiple relationships and you actually say,
Yeah.
I am polyamorous. Like, if you want to date, then be aware that I'm going to be dating other people as well.
Hmm.
Because you just specifically said she has this but doesn't have quite that, have that. This person has, you know, most of things to come, but they quite, you know, so
Yeah.
why not
I
have...
mean, yeah, this is very subjective. I mean, like, you know, I think monogamy. I certainly think there's been a decrease in monogamous relationships. Why that is, I mean, we could really sit here and create another whole podcast and try and debunk that. But being in a polyamorous relationship, I mean, it's on the rise. People are doing it, and I think more and more as the years go by and we start to realize that there is such a rise in divorce rates, people are starting to realize that they don't actually need to be married to be in a lustful and loving relationship. They can just have a partner. Now, there are agreements within that partnership where the other partner can see other people and not be emotionally attached. Personally, I don't see that working unless you've kind of equally distributed your lens and your feelings to the people. I personally don't see it like where, like, say I'm with you and then you give me permission to sleep with another woman. I don't really see it happening. But to answer your question, why not why not more polyamorous relationships? Was that the question?
As in more of a case of if the choices are so varied, but the boxes are not all ticked, why not put yourself in a position where you can have all the boxes ticked,
okay.
but by multiple people?
Right. Okay. So it's kind of like going into good old days in Woolworths and going to the pick and mix store, right? Just taking one from here. Yeah, I'll take one from there. People are doing that now, but I think it's under the umbrella term of dating.
Wow.
I really think.
So it's not shared then. That's the difference.
Yeah, I think
It's just assumed.
It's happening, but in a very non-committal way, especially in the early stages of dating. I can't tell you how many women I know, men as well, but I'm specifically saying women because it can be quite surprising when you hear that a woman like will do this. You know, for example, I'm not against anyone having their options open. I think it's a very healthy way to date, but I do believe in focusing on one person, and if that doesn't work out, then exploring someone else. I think that's dating done correctly. Whereas if you're dating multiple people at once, how are you ever going to form any sort of emotional connection unless your aim and goal is, as you said, to kind of have your boxes checked at the same time. So it's not that's an option. That's what people are doing nowadays. Do I think it's correct? You know, each to their own. I personally wouldn't do it. I like to focus on one person at a time, and really feel them and understand them before I move on to the next. And sometimes connections just are cut short, and for whatever reason, you then move on to the next. And that's what dating allows you to do. It allows you to be in this space where it's like, I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to not like a specific trait or personality trait about someone. So therefore, I'm going to explore something else. So,
just taking it back to fantasies, you said men do fantasize, as in like the fantasy of what this potential relationship could be. You said they do. They don't, but they do. What did you mean by that?
we have the capability of fantasizing and looking into the future, but sort of at a surface level, not as a deeper core connect. I mean, I think you have to be a different echelon of a man to be able to really feel and emotionally deep it. you need to be very connected to yourself, and your sense of self needs to be really high in that respect. But what I was trying to say is that we can have that quick capability of just looking at a woman and just quickly imagining, like, oh, I wonder what our kids are going to look like, or can I imagine her by the altar with me, you know, that sort of sense, you know, just really quickly. Because I mean, I do that. I don't want to speak for all men, but I certainly do apply that method in my head when I'm dating someone. But I think women really need to be emotionally invested to imagine that. But at the same time, I do feel that if a woman can, you know, you've been on a date where you're sat down in front of someone and you're just thinking, yeah, I can see this working. I don't know how many times, like, let's just say 2% of the time that happens.
Right.
But the other 98% of the time, you're just like, I'm not sure. You kind of just know. And then a couple of drinks down, you're like, yeah, why not? Yeah. Like, so.
Well, that changed quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it happens, and we're humans, and we're allowed to make those mistakes. And I don't think we should be able to judge ourselves for it. But yeah, I think we both man and woman have the capabilities to just really look quickly into the future and just imagine it. And I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go about it. I mean, as I said, going back to what I said earlier on about working with the here and now, really enjoying, like, I'm sat with you in this podcast, I'm enjoying this moment. I'm not thinking, oh, I wonder what our next future podcast going to sound like. Is it going to be as good as this? Is it going to be worse? Whatever. Like, I'm just enjoying now. So I think it's a very stoic way to look at life, and you'll just enjoy life more. You'll enjoy dating more when you just don't worry about the future and just ask those present questions, like, is this person right for me now? Are they giving me what I need? You know, what are their values? And I think asking questions and showing that curiosity is the best form of dating that you can do. So that will probably be my biggest takeaway for if we were to wrap everything up now. Just be like, be curious, ask questions, really understand who the person you're with is, whether it's dating or whether it's in even a longer relationship. I don't know, you've got some questions ready for us, possibly, maybe we can explore. So
yeah, 100%. And I feel like that is the key word there, curiosity. It's something we talk about a lot in the therapy world. Just be curious. Try not to bring theory too much to the practice. Just be curious about the person's life and allow that person to open up.
Absolutely.
And again, with my clients, within business as well, be curious about, you know, so I really love that.
100%. And actually, just quickly on that, and I don't know if maybe we can edit this part out, opening up a can of worms here, but I think it's really important for people to understand the difference between coaching and therapy. And just stemming off what we were talking about, working with the here and now, that is what sharing that building that therapeutic alliance is with your clients. That, you know, that counseling method is really whatever your client brings into the session, and they start talking about, for example, I'm worried about this. It's like, okay, but what are you feeling now? What are you bringing into the session now? And you can do that in coaching as well, but the thing is, the difference between counseling and coaching is, I look at it as like a futuristic conversation. So when people want relationship coaching, you want to really manifest and imagine what your future relationship is going to look like. Whereas when you're working with couples in counseling, you're trying to understand what the issue is now, and maybe delve into some past traumas as well to understand, well, what's happened so that this is happening now. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, so we're learning about this right now, so this is literally in my mind. There's so many different approaches within therapy, and you have to sort of, and what I love about what your background is you've done a counselling qualification on level 3, and you've also done the coaching element, and I love that, and I have quite strong views about the coaching slash therapy side of it. But for me, I think it's what you just said then, where it's about whatever's happened in the past. If you bring that into the now, that's Gestalt therapy. That is actually Gestalt. It's actually yes, it happened, but how is that affecting you now? So although, you know, therapy is about the past, I think it can also be about how is that past affecting you now.
Absolutely.
What I feel quite strongly about is I've had my own coaches. I do you know, coaching myself, and I have found that every client I've ever had has always brought something heavy to the table. It's never just about putting an offer together or a package. It's about confidence. Okay, where does that lack of confidence come from? Well, that lack of confidence comes from wanting to make my mum or dad proud. And where does that come? Not feeling worthy enough, not feeling seen, not feeling heard as a child. So, and it goes so deep. Those beliefs are really deep. And I felt I've never wanted to be a therapist, but I'm on a therapy course right now, and it's intense. But I want to be able to hold people in a place where I feel competent and confident to be able to hold that space for someone, even if we are talking about their business and what their future plans are for courses or you know, offerings, whatever it is. So. And something that's been triggering me recently, although we don't call it triggering in the counselling world, because we have to come to the table having an adult conversation. Because if I was therapizing, I always use this word, if I was therapizing you right now, I couldn't just be like, stop, you've triggered me, I need a moment, because you're my client. So I try not to use the word trigger, but something that has been triggering me recently is there is a program that I mentioned to you called Toxic and in Love. #Blue Therapy. And they have 2 relationship coaches on there. And some of the conversation, obviously the setting is therapy, but they are coaches. And the thing that's got me going is, I wrote it down actually because I was watching it last night. It's quite trashy, but I love looking at it from the coach perspective, obviously being a coach myself. And one of the coaches said, your tears say a lot about how much you care. And that's such a beautiful statement to say. But in the therapy world, you'd never say that statement. So the guy was breaking down. He was very tearful. He was very emotional, and he was completely quiet. And those are the words that the coach said to him. There was what's wrong with that, in my opinion, is his words were, your tears say a lot about how much you care. He had no idea why he was crying. Not a clue. He assumed it was because he cared. He probably does, and that's a beautiful sentence to say. There's something wrong with that sentence. But if we place that in a proper sort of therapy setting, you would probably ask an open-ended question and say, what's going on for you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even in coaching as well, I would even go as far as saying, like, I personally wouldn't, if I saw someone crying in my coaching session, whether because they were moved about something that they said or a new insight that they built in their mind, I would ask the same question and say, you know, what's coming up for you right now? But yeah, the mistake that coach made, or I wouldn't say it was a mistake, but what he could have done differently, essentially he's placing the word care, as you said, because the client didn't know why they were crying. And you're planting that seed in their head that, oh, maybe I am crying because I care.
Because I care. When actually that might not have been the case at all.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, I think it makes it about the other person instead of them. When you're with someone, you want to stay with them, 100%. Regardless of what's happening outside of them. It's like person-centered therapy. The person is at the center of the therapy.
Correct.
So again, it just felt a little bit like expert and non-expert almost. And again, I've also had to be really conscious. Obviously, my coaching has taken priority, so that's where my brain has wired itself.
Oh, tell me about it.
And so now I'm doing therapy. I'm having to unwire because, you know, I'm such a positive force when I'm coaching someone. I'm all about like injecting and pushing and challenging. But what I also have to be conscious of is in therapy, you can't give positive connotations of anything. It has to be neutral.
100%.
So you can't say you've done a great job today, because they might be like, well, I've just cried my eyes out talking about my traumas from the past. How is that a good job? They don't see it like you see it, because you've had all the training and they haven't. But again, that makes it expert, non-expert, and it's got to be neutral. So you have to be really like, you know, it's not positive. It's just you've said a lot today. We've covered a lot today. It's more sort of factual, if anything, and let that sit. So it's just
100%.
You can tell I'm quite passionate about
I can, and you know what? It's really resonating with me, because I just remember when I was doing my level 3, I had a very, he was such an excellent tutor. His name is Diego. Shout out Diego if you're ever listening to this. But when we would do our, what are the sessions called when they watch
role playing.
No, it was a real session, but observe session. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So as part of our observe practice, Diego I would be with one of our peers, and Diego would be sitting next to me, and he would do this thing where he would pull down the curtain. He would be okay with stopping the session because it was an observe practice. And going back to what you said about taking your coaching hat off and putting your counselling hat on, because I had just finished my coaching course, so I think I was just in the middle of it. I did my coaching and my counselling course at the same time.
Oh.
So I was learning 2 different mindsets at the same time. But I seem to have had more of a natural coaching approach. And I remember a couple of times asking my clients, practice clients, questions, about where they would like to be at the end of the session, and that was when, for example, Diego would pull the curtain and say, you're wearing your coaching hat. This is not about getting somewhere.
Solutions.
It's about what they're feeling now. What is the client bringing into the session now? Maybe it was just habitual for me to just ask, so where would you like this conversation to go? That's a coaching conversation. What I spoke about, futuristic. Can't do that in counselling. That's not what it's about at all.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've been stopped but interestingly enough, I do think you can take counselling into coaching, but I don't think you can take coaching into counselling.
That's spot on, I would agree.
Because with coaching, if something is coming up for your client, you can ask questions and build that therapeutic alliance and ask,
I've changed my mind.
What's going on for you? Tell me what's going on for you.
So I had this. We did a role play interview. I was going for a placement and to volunteer to do counselling, and I absolutely nailed it, and so I should, because I'm in recruitment. But one thing that they asked was, is the coaching going to affect the counselling? And my answer was no, because I'm going to my contract with the client when we first start will be watertight. So it will be really contained, as in what is permissible as something we can discuss, and where the boundaries lie. So I actually do want to keep them 2 separate things. So if you were a coaching client of mine and something heavy was brought to the table, I would then not turn into your therapist, because we would absolutely blur the lines between our coaching relationship. So 100%. I would say it would have to be either counselling with me or either therapy with, or either coaching.
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%. Yeah, I actually, I couldn't agree more. And I think as a coach, and for anyone who's getting into the coaching space as well, setting boundaries from the start with your clients, as you very correctly put it, contracting is so imperative. At the beginning of any session. I had a client who is he's a young lad, and he came in to the session. He's like, I want to be this was interesting. He said, I want to be a footballer, but I'm also studying to be a doctor. And I was like, okay, already that's a huge ambition. As the session went on, I noticed that he started talking about anxiety and having panic attacks and all that stuff. And I let the session go on, but towards the end of the session, I I almost had to put myself in a position where I was like, listen, there's some heavy stuff coming up in this session. I'm wondering if it's better for us to maybe take a pause and for you to reevaluate what is it that you actually need. Is it coaching that you need, or is it therapy or counseling? And I think it's really important for people who are not used to coaching or maybe have an idea in their head of what coaching is, to be explained what coaching can do for someone and what counseling can do for someone. So that really, there's a grey area in between that needs to be, a light needs to be shined on, and people need to understand that they can't come into a coaching session thinking, oh, this person's going to make me feel better, and then start talking about all their past childhood traumas, because it's just not going to work. That's not the aim of coaching.
I am gonna pick a card.
Yes.
From the Diary of a CEO conversation cards. Thank you, Stephen. And I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
And then you get to ask me a question.
Okay. Sounds good. Shall I pick the card like at random now, or?
Do I want to pick it, or do I want you? Let's let the universe pick it then. And if I don't like it, then I'm choosing.
Okay. Is there something you associate with a key moment of hardship in your life? Joe Sugg. I know Joe Sugg. Okay, let me read that again. Is there something you associate with a key moment of hardship in your life? Oh, my mind is already just automatically drifting to my breakup, which I had 4 years ago. I mean, that was possibly the best but hardest decision that I had to make in my life at the time, because I was probably at the peak of where I should be career-wise, but I was just drained. I was drained, and I had to make a decision to something that's either gonna catapult me into a new mindset shift of being and accepting being alone, or do I continue being with someone who I don't want to be with? And there's nothing worse than feeling alone in your home. So that would be my answer. Yeah.
That's really powerful. Really sounds like you were at a crossroads.
I was, yeah, it was very difficult. I mean, they were great. But I was very different, and I wasn't who I was. No one saw me as the Rumton that people knew once before. But gone is the old Rumton and emerged as the new
The
podcast, butterfly,
Mm-hmm.
speaking, relationship coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you. Right. Would you like me to hold the cards out for
Yes,
you?
please. There's some couple of blank ones in there, I think. But
A couple blank ones. Okay. Let's go.
what do you promise to do to make our world a better place?
There you go.
That is a really good question, actually.
It is. See the sparkle in your eye as you read that.
I think for me, in the world that we live in at the moment, where there's a lot of pressure to be seen and heard in a very certain way, especially in the online space, to be authentic, to just be yourself. And I promise to continue being myself and showing every side. I have a habit of oversharing, which is my genuineness. But I think keep bringing that to the table and showing not only others but myself that it's okay to be me. And I think if that can resonate with other people and help them to also feel like they can also be themselves, then great.
Love that. Love that. Amazing. Authenticity at its best.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, one more little thing. So I've always got to have a little...
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay, so I've got a really cute message in a bottle jar. And Rum, what I'd like you to do is there's a little piece of paper and a pen, and you can use my fancy thing to lean on, is I'd like you to think about an impactful statement or message that has impacted you in some way, that you might have heard from somewhere else or it's just come to you. And I'd like you to ask a question with that statement. So it might be something that's just meaningful to you. And then I want you to ask a question based on that, because we're going to ask that question to our next podcast guest.
I've got it. We're going to throw that in the River Thames. So one day someone's going to get that.
No, because the bottom comes off.
Oh, he does it? Oh, yeah, it does. Oh, my goodness. All right. Do you want to show the camera?
That's the first one.
Oh, first of many.
Yes.
So
indeed.
you'll know how many podcasts you've done based on
From
how
that.
many papers you have
Yes.
there. So
Yeah.
you make sure that you do that after every podcast.
Absolutely, will
Yeah.
do.
Well, thank you so much. That was amazing.
Yes.
And
Thank
yeah,
you,
hopefully first of many.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
being
much for
here.
hosting. Thank you.
So, what are the key takeaways? The journey to self-discovery is paved with moments of hardship. That's a fact. Embrace authenticity and challenge the norms whilst never underestimating the impact of self-reflection. Perhaps through self-reflection, growth is kind of a byproduct. So as we part ways, think about the message you'd leave in a bottle for someone to find. Perhaps this should be a guide for our own actions in life. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep talking.